What if I told you Australia could supercharge its future by borrowing one big, bold American habit without losing its identity? It's not about copying everything the US does. In fact, some of the things America's famous for are exactly what Australia should avoid. But buried in the noise are a handful of ideas that have helped the US stay ahead in technology, business, and culture. And if Australia tapped into just one of them, the ripple effects could be massive. Imagine an Australia that moves faster on big projects, takes more creative risks, and builds industries that don't just follow the world, they lead it. Sounds exciting, right? Well, buckle up, because we're about to break down 12 game-changing lessons Australia could learn from America, starting with something that powers everything from Silicon Valley to NASA. If you're watching from Australia, drop your city name below. If you're watching from the US, tell us which American habit you think Australia should borrow. But creative energy alone isn't enough. And that's where our first lesson begins. When you think of the United States, chances are your mind jumps to Hollywood, skyscrapers, or maybe even the chaotic political drama. But behind the headlines is a machine that keeps the country moving at breakneck speed: its obsession with innovation. America spends more on research and development than any other country, over $500 billion a year. That's more than the GDP of New Zealand, and it fuels everything from self-driving cars to cancer-fighting biotech. Silicon Valley didn't just appear by accident. It grew out of a culture that treats big ideas like they're worth betting the farm on. And here's where Australia could take a page from the American playbook. Sure, we've got brilliant scientists, inventors, and entrepreneurs here, but too often their ideas stall because funding is cautious, timelines are slow, and the mindset leans toward safe and proven instead of bold and risky. The US, on the other hand, celebrates failure as part of the process. A startup can crash spectacularly on Monday and still get funded for a new idea by Friday. That willingness to swing for the fences, knowing you might strike out, creates an environment where the next breakthrough is always just around the corner. Think about it. Australia has the talent, the resources, and the global reputation for quality. What it needs is the green light to move faster, fund riskier bets, and build industries that can compete not just today, but 10 years from now. Because in a world where technology doubles in power every 2 years, playing it safe is actually the riskiest move of all. If you could speed up one thing in Australia, whether it's building infrastructure, funding startups, or approving new tech, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. But creative energy alone isn't enough to secure a nation's future. Which brings us to a challenge that every country eventually faces: retirement security. Let's talk about something way less flashy than tech startups, but a lot more personal: how you're going to survive when you stop working. Australia has one of the smartest systems in the world for this: the superannuation scheme. It forces employers to put a slice of your paycheck into a retirement fund from the moment you start working. That means by the time you're ready to clock out for good, you've got a financial cushion that's been growing for decades. Now here's the twist: the US doesn't have anything like it. Retirement savings there are a gamble. Most workers rely on a patchwork of personal investments, employer-sponsored 401k plans, or, if all else fails, Social Security payments that barely cover the basics. And if the markets tank right before you retire, tough luck. This is one area where Australia is ahead, but also a warning. Because as the cost of living skyrockets, even superannuation might not be enough unless the system keeps evolving. Here's where looking at America could help: not to copy its model, but to take its flexibility and high-return investment strategies and merge them with Australia's safety net approach. Imagine a hybrid system. Your nest egg is guaranteed to exist, but you also have the tools to grow it faster, smarter, and more independently. And here's why this matters to everyone, not just people near retirement age. A strong retirement system doesn't just protect the elderly, it frees up the next generation from having to financially rescue their parents or grandparents. That's more money flowing into businesses, housing, and the economy. If you're under 30, what's your plan for retirement? And if you're already retired, what's one piece of money advice you wish you knew earlier? But securing your bank account is only part of the equation. If a country can't unite its people around a shared vision, money alone won't hold it together. And that's where we hit lesson number 3: unity in diversity. America has a lot of flaws, but one thing it's nailed for over 2 centuries is branding itself as one nation with a shared identity. From E pluribus unum, out of many one, to the way every schoolchild grows up reciting the pledge, there's a constant reminder that no matter where you come from, you're part of something bigger. That unity doesn't mean everyone agrees. Far from it. Americans argue, protest, and fight for their beliefs loudly. But even through the chaos, there's an underlying pride in simply being American. It's in the music, the movies, the sports, and the everyday symbols, from flags on porches to fireworks on the 4th of July. Australia, on the other hand, has a more subtle national identity. We pride ourselves on our laid-back culture, sporting heroes, and beautiful landscapes. But when it comes to a strong, shared civic narrative, it's a bit muted. Ask 10 Australians what it means to be Australian, and you might get 10 completely different answers. This is where the US approach offers a lesson, not in copying the slogans or ceremonies, but in building a shared story that celebrates Australia's diversity while keeping the core values front and center. Whether you're first generation or your family's been here for centuries, there should be a unifying heartbeat that makes you say, "I'm proud to be part of this." Why does this matter? Because a country with a clear sense of self is harder to divide, socially, politically, or economically. Unity gives people the confidence to face global challenges together instead of splintering into us versus them camps. If you had to describe Australia in just 3 words, what would they be? Post them below and see if others agree. And speaking of unity, it's not just about values, it's about building the systems that keep a country connected. Which brings us to lesson number 4, infrastructure and funding. When America decides to build something big, it doesn't tiptoe, it charges in headfirst. Massive interstate highways, sprawling airports, and stadiums the size of small cities. They get it done, and they get it done fast. But here's the secret most people miss. A lot of those mega projects aren't fully funded by government money. They're built through public-private partnerships, or PPPs, where private investors help finance and deliver infrastructure in exchange for long-term returns. Now, Australia already uses PPPs, but we tend to play it safe, choosing lower-risk, smaller-scale projects. The US takes a far more aggressive approach, often bringing in private funding to supercharge timelines and scale. That's why they can announce a new tech hub or bridge today, and have it up before an Australian project even clears planning approval. Imagine if Australia leaned harder into these partnerships, not just for transport but for renewable energy plants, AI research hubs, and even high-speed rail. The benefits? Faster builds, more jobs, and a stronger incentive for companies to keep those projects world-class. Of course, there's a balance. Go too far, and you risk handing public resources over to private interests entirely, a trap America has fallen into before. But with the right oversight, PPPs can turn bold ideas into reality years ahead of schedule. If you could fast-track one major project in Australia, a bullet train, a new airport, a solar mega farm, which would you pick? Drop it in the comments. And while strong infrastructure keeps a country physically connected, there's another kind of connection that's just as vital: trust between the people and their institutions. That's where lesson number 5 comes in: trust and civic duty. One thing Australia does better than almost any other democracy: compulsory voting. You can't just sit on the sidelines. You've got to show up, have your say, and yes, maybe even enjoy a democracy sausage while you're at it. The result? Turnout rates that leave countries like the US in the dust. But here's where America can teach a reverse lesson. While US voter turnout is often shockingly low, they have something Australia can build on: a culture of ongoing civic engagement. Town halls, local debates, petitions, grassroots campaigns. Americans don't just wait for election day to get involved, they'll rally for issues big and small year-round. That's a level of political energy that can hold leaders accountable long after the votes are counted. The other part of trust? Transparency. When governments start hiding or manipulating information, public faith collapses fast. America's had some painful lessons here, from censored statistics to politically motivated data purges. For Australia, the warning is clear. Guard the independence of institutions like the Bureau of Statistics, the ABC, and the Electoral Commission, like your democracy depends on it. Because it does. Strong civic duty isn't just about laws. It's about culture. A country where people believe their voice matters will fight harder to protect it. What's the one change you'd make to Australia's voting or political system to make it better? Comment below. Let's see the ideas flow. And speaking of systems that impact everyone, there's one area where America's example is both a cautionary tale and a source of opportunity: healthcare, trade, and global strategy. That's where lesson number 6 takes us. Number 6, health, trade, and global strategy. Let's start with the obvious: healthcare. If you've ever seen an American hospital bill floating around the internet, you know it can be jaw-dropping. We're talking thousands for an ambulance ride, 5 figures for a simple surgery, and medication prices that can bankrupt a family. By contrast, Australia's pharmaceutical benefits scheme keeps most drug costs low enough that people don't have to choose between medicine and groceries. But here's the twist. America's system, as broken as it looks from the outside, has one undeniable strength. It drives medical innovation at a blistering pace. The world's leading cancer treatments, breakthrough surgeries, and high-tech diagnostic tools, many are developed in the US first. If Australia could pair its affordable healthcare model with America's R&D intensity, we could have a system that's both accessible and cutting edge. Now let's talk trade. Right now, Australian beef exports to the US are booming thanks to favorable tariffs. In fact, American consumers are eating more Aussie beef than ever. It's a reminder that trade isn't just about economics, it's a strategic game. The US has mastered the art of using trade deals to expand influence, reward allies, and lock in economic advantages. If Australia applied the same aggressive strategy, we could carve out bigger wins in sectors like tech, renewable energy, and rare earth minerals. And then there's global strategy, especially defense. America doesn't just defend itself, it shapes the security environment for half the world. Love it or hate it, that reach keeps them in the driver's seat of global politics. Australia, on the other hand, is in a tricky spot, heavily reliant on alliances, but sometimes stretched too thin to hold its own. Learning from America's integrated military, diplomatic, and economic approach could make Australia a more decisive player, not just a supportive one. If Australia could sign one new major trade deal tomorrow, which country would you choose, and why? Drop your answer below. And while we're talking about the future, there's one area both countries are racing to figure out, and it's not just about money or politics. It's about technology, creativity, and the soul of democracy itself. That's lesson number 7, AI and democracy drama. Number 7, AI and democracy drama. Right now, one of the biggest battles between the US and Australia isn't about submarines, trade deals, or even climate policy. It's about artificial intelligence. In the US, tech giants have been charging full speed ahead with AI, often pulling in massive data sets, music, art, writing, without compensating the creators. It's the classic move fast and break things approach. That's why you've got Hollywood writers striking over AI-generated scripts, musicians furious about cloned voices, and artists seeing their style ripped without permission. Australia's creative community has been watching closely, and they're not happy. From musicians to visual artists, the push is on to protect cultural rights before AI swallows the industry whole. The lesson here? America's innovation-first mindset can spark incredible breakthroughs. But without strong guardrails, it can also bulldoze over the very people who make that innovation possible. And then there's the political stage. America's democracy is loud, messy, and at times painfully theatrical. Campaign rallies feel like rock concerts, debates become viral meme factories, and policy often takes a backseat to personality. The danger? Public attention gets sucked into the drama instead of the substance. Australia should take note, not to copy the showmanship, but to double down on substance over spectacle. Because once politics becomes pure entertainment, the real issues get buried under the noise. Do you think AI should have strict limits on what it can create? Or should innovation always come first? Let's hear your take in the comments. And with those 12 lessons covered, let's bring it all home with one final thought. So what have we learned? America's greatest strength isn't just its size or wealth. It's a mix of bold innovation, deep civic pride, and a willingness to take risks, both in business and culture. Australia has a solid foundation, but there are clear opportunities to speed up, step up, and sharpen its own unique edge by borrowing smartly from the American playbook. From funding breakthrough ideas and securing retirement futures, to building a stronger national identity and protecting creative rights in the AI era, each lesson is a chance to grow without losing what makes Australia Australia. Now it's over to you. What's one American idea you think Australia should adopt tomorrow? Or maybe one American mistake Australia should definitely avoid? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every comment. And if this video got you thinking, hit that like button, share it with a mate, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and remember, the future belongs to those bold enough to learn from the world and brave enough to write their own story.